Hi there. The final year project digital documentary is one of the three final year projects that we offer in our school. Um, have you ever thought about the potential of a student research or your research as a transformative force for good in society? If you believe in the power of voice, or the power of voices, or the power of podcasting, if you want to make a difference in society through your academic work at university, then the digital documentary may be the right final year project option for you. What does it involve? Well, first of all, you do not have to write a dissertation. Instead, you are supposed to produce a digital documentary, basically a podcast. The digital documentary or podcast is made up of extracts of the interviews that you conduct during semester one, combined, blended with your own narration. The scripts are about 4,000 words long, and the script counts towards 50% of the mark. But the digital documentary is fundamentally a podcast. So you also need to produce an audio file in which you incorporate your voice and the voices of extracts of the interviews that you have recorded, and that's worth 20%. And finally, obviously, there is a research outline or research project essay. Remember that we are in a university. We need to give some academic basis to what we do. So, in your research outline or research project essay, you explain and discuss the research that underpins your podcast and the purpose of your podcast. The final year project digital documentary is offered to students in our school. In the past, students have done it in French, in film studies, Arabic, Spanish, Portuguese. I'm going to go through what it involves um, using Spanish as an example because it's the topic that I know better. Imagine that you have been studying Spanish in your degree, you're taking modules in Spanish history, society, and that you went last year to Spain for your year abroad, and you discovered that there was a rampant new form of Spanish, not so new form of Spanish nationalism, and you think that that is an interesting topic for your final year project, and you also think that given it is quite contemporary, you could interview people, either Spanish people in Leeds, asking them questions about their national identity feelings, or Spanish people through Skype, if they are based in Spain. And you think, oh, I could do a digital documentary, a podcast on this. So, how does it go? So, let's say you have the topic, even if it's very broadly defined, a bit perhaps undefined. So, what do? Um, First of all, you will have to fill a short questionnaire or form indicating the topic that you want to do. All of you, all the students, will be asked to fill in this form at some point over the summer. So that questionnaire or form with your choice is then sent to the final year project coordinator of the subject concerned, in this case, Spanish plus. Mm. So in that form, you indicate not only the topic, but the fact that you want to do a digital documentary. Remember that the module code is 3350 MODL. And at some point, you allocated a supervisor. You will be able to discuss the details of the project with your supervisor later on. And for instance, you can discuss whether you want to do your project in English or in French, Spanish, or any other language instead. Many people may be thinking, well, this digital documentary is only suitable for certain topics, is rather narrow. Well, I would invite you to reflect upon this. Let's look at an example. Imagine, for instance, that you have been studying a lot of Spanish literature, that you're fascinated about Golden Age literature. For instance, imagine that you are very fond of El Quixote, one of the greatest novels ever written. Can you really do a podcast research project, a digital documentary on El Quixote? Well, you certainly cannot interview El Quixote because he's a fictional character. You cannot interview Miguel de Cervantes either because he died in the same day as William Shakespeare on the 23rd of April 1616. But you could, for instance, you could do a project on how Cervantes or El Quixote is being taught in schools or in universities, or you could do a project on how El Quixote, the character of El Quixote, is being performed in contemporary art. So that means, for instance, that you would interview teachers or readers of the book or artists. So it's very important that you consider this. Um, if you think that you could do a project on a certain topic, um, you're always free to discuss with your supervisor whether this is the best way to achieve your objectives, to fulfill your research intentions. Talk to your supervisor about the suitability of a podcast for your final year project. So, how do we support you, the student, with this uh, digital documentary module final year project? So, we have milestones like with any other final year project. We provide training, which is compulsory, on ethics, protocols, methodology for interviewing, um, obviously the question of data as well, treating your data that you're going to be gathering, how to write a podcast, podcast editing, open educational resources, etc. So it's a quite rich uh, module in that respect. So at the beginning, when we started with this idea of the podcasts, there were not really podcasts as such. This is a relatively old module because before it became a final year project. It used to be a module in Spanish, and um, and the students who wanted were able to upload their documentaries in an open education resources repository called the Homebox, which is still available. But later on, we became a bit more sophisticated, and we started to promote in social media the work that students would be doing in advance. I mean, this is obviously not essential, not compulsory at all, but is an option. But nowadays, we are embracing the thriving um, podcasting culture that we experience in our own university and beyond. So we are somehow ahead of our times. We are offering students the possibility to be uh, in the avant-garde of academic communication, podcasting. So I'm going to leave you with some of the things. Perhaps you could read them easier. So we train you with this, yeah, and we support you with this. There are some rules. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of methodology, uh, not in terms of ethics. There are very clear protocols that you have to adhere to. And then I'd like to invite you to think about the employable skills that you're going to acquire by doing this, and also the relationship between you and your supervisor and the relationship with the community that you are uh, directing your podcast to. So this is what we're trying to achieve. If you have any questions, first of all, please watch this video again. Um, then you can have a look to the provisional handout of the module. I mean, I say provisional, but it'll be very similar to previous years. Um, you can also contact your final year project subject coordinator or an academic member of staff, all these obviously in due course. And if you have any questions about the training and support that you receive in the final year project for the interviews and the recruitment and the ethical protocols, etc., then you can contact me, Antonio Martinez Arboleda. Thank you very much.